Figured this was going to be quite a simple job. Obviously got the head off, got most of everything else off, and I thought this little alloy plate, this alloy section at the bottom, didn't really intend on taking that off. Then when I got the sump off, try and show you under it. Light's a bit bad because I've been at it all day, and I told the missus it would only be a few hours, but still. Good job she's in it for the long haul. Right, when I took the sump off, I was expecting to find, I don't know what these are called, some sort of like splash shield at the bottom of the pistons, and I was expecting this to just unbolt so that I got access to the bottom of the piston, so I could undo them, take the caps off, change the bearings, and what, so I had to pull the pistons out and redo the piston rings. It turns out the lovely techs at Ford didn't want you to do that, so they made this bottom alloy part of the engine. Oh, okay, fair enough. I'll unbolt it. Undid all the bolts, it still wouldn't come out. Turns out between the engine and the gearbox there's a plate up there which appears to be the crank seal, but it bolts to the alloy part as well as to the steel block. So I was trying to do this without taking the engine out, basically because I don't have an engine hoist. Turns out I can't do that, so it's a good job I've got a trolley jack and pallets and bits of wood. So we'll lump it out and then get some mates tomorrow help me lump it back in, but no way around it. I'm determined to show that this can be done if you're on your driveway, and it will be, but engine's got to come out, which is a pain. So just thought I'd keep you updated. Well, there's the lump, got it in. The trolley jack and ignorance method is fun, definitely fun. So take off clutch. I'd imagine the flywheel's got to come off. I'm assuming it's dual mass, I don't know yet. And then finally get that bottom alloy off, get the caps off the pistons, and get the bearings changed. So I'm just going to rattle through this. It's only undoing bolts. I mean, even getting the engine to this point, there's no great secret to it. It was just undoing bolts until things came loose. So I'd imagine the rebuild's probably going to be of more use to anybody, and you can see what's in there. So I'm just going to get it all stripped down now. I'm really running out of time, so it's surprising how much time recording things takes. I'm just going to rattle through, get it all stripped down, get it cleaned up, and then show you the reassembly and give you all a chance to have a good laugh at us humping it all back into the van. Engine hoist is definitely on the shopping list. Finally, it's time to get the thing put back together and get the engine back in the van. So it's been sat here on the workbench, and the workbench has just about survived. So I think that's going in the skip as well. Got to get stuff. We've got a lot of builds planned over this next sort of 12 months. So I think we need to gear up a bit for it. Engines, well, the block's painted. Not going overboard with it. It's just a van engine. I just wanted to tidy it up. I'm going to clean up the engine bay as well. I put new bearings in, well, new shells in, ready for the crank to go in. New shells obviously going in the caps as well, and then the cap nuts all get torqued down, ready to go. Because I haven't got an engine hoist and I haven't got an engine stand, it's going to be a bit sketchy getting this thing back into the van. I can lift it up, I can carry it, but by the time the crank's in and by the time the alloy bottom plate's in and the pistons are in, the chances of carrying it are slim to none. So I probably won't record that bit because it's sketchy, but it'll involve a trolley jack, wishful thinking, balancing it, getting it up into position, so the next time you see it, it should be in the van. The old shells, if anybody's interested, actually weren't too bad at all. Always worth checking the old shells, give you an idea of what's going on in the engine. And they were actually pretty decent. There's wear on them, like what you'd expect, but nothing over the top at all. In fact, none of them have gone through to the copper underneath. They've all still got silver, and there's a couple of odd little scrape marks, but again, nothing that I wouldn't expect to see. These are these are Ford shells. Whether they're original or not, I don't know. I did check the thickness against the new ones, and there's very little in it. It's just that the silver surface is starting to wear through, but I would imagine there's a fair few miles left in these. The camera's not picking it up too well, but certainly nothing that made me worry about it. I was worried about the piston that had picked up the scrape marks, so that's being replaced. I did clean up the bore inside, but I got really lucky. Where the scrape marks are on the piston is right at the very bottom of the cylinder lining. So when I tried it with a replacement piston, because I wanted to make sure that the new rings weren't going to get destroyed by the scrape marks, the rings actually don't go down to where the scrape marks are on the cylinder lining. So ideal world, I wouldn't bother getting it rebored, I'd just swap the block. But with how freely it moves and the fact that the rings don't go down to the scrape marks, I think I just got lucky. If they'd have been any further up in the cylinder wall, I'd have just swapped the block out. At this point, it doesn't make any sense to not do when blocks on these engines are really readily available. But I just don't see the point. It's going to be fine. Well, I assume it's going to be fine. We'll find out when we turn the key. So it's a bit hard work filming in here. I'll do my best. I'll pop it on sort of a time lapse so that you can see what I'm doing. But in terms of detail, it won't show you much. What I would say is check your torque specs. There's this is 2.2 HDI. There's loads of different variants. It is a Ford engine. It is the same engine as what's in the Transit, the Boxer, the Ducato, but they're all different variants. So the torque settings, this is 2.2 120 brake out of a Citroen Relay. The process will be the same on the other engines, I assume, but the specs might be different, so don't take what I'm doing as gospel. This is just the way it works on this van. And like I've said before, this is more documenting what I'm doing. It's not really a how-to guide. But if it gives somebody a bit of a head start, stops you falling into the same traps I did, then great. The head's pretty clean, but still got a few things to do. Looks different on the camera than what it does in real life. This is about as clean as I'm going to need to get it. What you're seeing is tarnishing on the alloy, but there's no debris or anything like that in there. Like I say, it does looks a bit different on the camera, but really important when you're cleaning the head, don't just do the head itself, the surface. Try and get, I can't show you, try and get down into these, there you go, where the injectors go. So when you take them down, you're doing the work on the head, you can grind the seats right at the very bottom, so that when you put the injectors back in with the new copper seals, they can sit properly, and that way you're going to get better compression. You won't get the fuel and all the rest of it bouncing back up there, but you're better off doing it with the head off. If you try and do it when the head's actually bolted onto the engine, whatever you end up cleaning out of the bottom of those holes is going to end up in your cylinders. You can turn the engine over without any injectors in, just to blow everything back up out the holes, but it just doesn't seem to make sense to me to put mess in there in the first place. And to clean them out, just use one of these. So this is just a cheap set. I can't even remember where I got it from, but yeah, it's just a seat cutting set. It was probably just a cheap one off eBay, and you get different size attachments. That's what they look like. You don't need to go mad with these, you're only cleaning the seat up just so that it can get a proper seal, but basically this attaches into there, and then there's a little grub screw in the side just to tighten it up, and then just a handle. And that goes into there. And then usually just a few turns, just keep checking it, don't go over the top with it, just to make sure that it's flat and clean, and then it's ready then for going on. I'm just going to make sure that I have got as much out as possible. So, and again, where the I don't know if you'll pick it up on this is where the glow plugs go in, so I need to give them a good clean, get as much debris out of there as I can. And I do tend to just stick a tap in there as well, just to clean the threads out. Nothing worse than when it comes time to changing glow plugs and you end up snapping one, because they're really, really thin, and then it's usually a head off job to get the old one out. So I'll get them all cleaned up, and again, before I put the head onto the block, I'm going to probably put the exhaust manifold on, and maybe even the turbo as well, because there's just not a lot of room at the back of the bulkhead. Between the bulkhead of the van comes down sort of here, so to try and get down there is really, really fiddly. So if I put the manifold on now, put the turbo on now, it's much easier to bolt everything up, torque it up, make sure the gaskets are right, and then get everything into the van all in one lump. The rest of it's pretty easy, there's quite a lot of space around the rest of it, but it makes sense to do them. Need to put new valve stem seals on, and obviously get the valves in as well. So I'm going to get all of the cleaning up bit. Still got to clean everything up underneath and get the valves seated. So I'll clean the injector ports first, then I'm going to be seating the valves. The valve seats actually are really clean, they're really, really good. I definitely need to get a better camera. But the valve seats are pretty good, so it's not going to take much to cut the valve seats. And given how manky the head was, as much as this isn't spotless, I'm taking it as a win. If it was a different kind of engine, I'd probably be looking to clean out the ports as well. Possibly even get a die grinder in there, just grind them out, get them smooth. these aren't too bad. And you do have to be careful if you're porting heads. Some heads, they do want the swirl. They want the air to swirl as it goes into the head. They don't. Not every head wants porting and polishing, and it does tend to be petrols that you do it to. This is just a van engine, so I'm not going to bother. We have got some builds coming up, some interesting ones actually, where we will be doing that to the head. There's 2 we've got planned for next year, and just getting the bits in for those now, and there'll be quite a lot of head work on those just to get the gases running cleaner, so you'll have to tune in for them. Right, I'll get to work on this. See if I can show you these. So you can see now at the bottom, I've only taken the minimum off. I mean, obviously I don't want to be taking any more metal than I need to, but it just gives a clean surface for the copper washer to sit on. So that should sit well. So now, similar sort of process for where the glow plugs are going. The glow plugs seat differently. It's pretty much the thread that seals them. So I'm not too worried about the surface. I just want to make sure that the threads are cleaned out. So I'll just run a tap down them, and then they seat. Really difficult to see with the naked eye, let alone anything else. But there is a very small seat right at the very bottom of the thread. I mean, whether you can get to them or not, I don't know. I certainly can't. But I'll just clean the threads up, so at least I know they've got a good way through. Grinding the seat's quite a simple job. It's pretty much the same on every head. Just a nice, easy process, well worth doing. I mean, head's pretty much all about gas flow, so getting a good seal, making sure everything stays where it should do, is obviously important. And I don't know if you can make out. Come on, focus. There you go. See the little black spots? You can barely feel them, but the polishing now, just popping these in, seating them so that you get a perfect seal, or as perfect as you can get it anyway, to the seats around the head. Just makes it gas tight, or as gas tight as you can get it. So they're pretty clean considering how old they are. And all they do, you pop some of the paste. This is just, again, reasonably cheap set that I bought. So you've got two cutting compounds, a coarse grade and a fine grade. The worse it is, use your coarse. Obviously these aren't too bad. I'll probably do one go with the coarse and then just polish them up with the fine. It's just a monotonous job. 3 or 4 dabs just on the underside of the valve. Pop it in. Your little sucker goes on, and you just polish it into place. You can get these that go onto a drill as well, which makes life a heck of a lot easier. I just don't have one, so manual, like most things in the shed. The one on the left I've just ground down, so you can see how it's gone dull. That's using the coarse paste. The one on the right is, well, that's how it was when I took the head apart. So you can see how the coarse is just cut down just to get rid of some of the bumps. And then that's the valve. If you can see, like a dull grey band. Really difficult to catch on this. There you go. So that's just taking down the surface. I'm going to use some of the fine paste now. Exactly the same process for both. Don't need to go mad with it. and I do a bit, clean it, check it, do a bit more, clean it, check it. I'm going to try and set the camera up now so you can see how it's done. It's exactly the same process for all of them, nothing changes at all, so it's boring, laborious, but got to be done. So these are the valve stem seals. You've got, literally looks like a little hat, sits on these, and then like a rubber inside, rubber seal on the top. The valve passes through it, and that's what stops your oil from going into your cylinders. So if you've got a smoky cylinder, well, if you're getting smoke out your exhaust, this is quite a common culprit. If you can imagine how many times that's going up and down, then you can understand why the rubber wears on them quite easily. So I think this was part of the problem on this engine to begin with. So I'll get these knocked in, and then once the valve stem seals go on first, and once they're in, I can poke the valves up from underneath, springs on, and then just the top parts just to lock them all in place. Putting the valves in is exactly the same as taking them out, just in reverse. So valve through the bottom, and spring. I haven't got a clue what these are, little top hat thing. Start to push the spring down. Need stronger fingers. And then these two little shell things, just to retain them. These can be right fiddly. And it's just rinse and repeat for all the others.